On this front, our first session, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be on the topic, leveraging Regtech for effective fintech regulation. We're honored to be joined by, first up, our moderator, partner Waterhouse and Co. LLP, Mr. Amit Jain. Thank you, Amit, for joining us. Also joined are our eminent panelists, Managing Director, Asia Pacific, Utimaco. We've got Mr. Deval Sheth. Let's give Mr. Deval Sheth a big round of applause. CISO, PayU Payments, Suresh Sharma. Let's warmly welcome him. Founder and CEO, TrackWizz, TSS Consultancy Services. We've got Sagar, Tanna joining us. Let's give our man a big, big round of applause. Amit, an able task ahead of you with all your renowned panelists. Over to you.
Thanks, GFF team, for having me here. It's a privilege to be part of this event. And more so, we at PwC are proud to be associated as a knowledge partner for this event. So that gives us additional sort of pleasure to be associated with this event. Thanks, Deval, Sagar, and Suresh for taking out time for this session. And friends, I must say that based on my conversations over the last couple of days, these gentlemen are actually an expert on this topic. And coming from diverse background, we are going to have a great session in the next 25-30 minutes. We are going to be, as we are going to be discovering this topic in a greater detail. So let me start the session with posing few questions. In this dynamic environment, we see a lot of regulatory changes that keeps happening. On a lighter note, people believe that, or rather they pray that, God, we don't want another RBI circular coming on Friday evening. Now with these changes, actually requires a lot of companies to ensure that not only they understand the impact, but also sort of implement those changes as part of their day-to-day products and services that they offer. Fintechs use a lot of data in designing or distributing their financial service products. And therefore, they need to ensure that the data what they actually access do have an appropriate data management framework to sort of store, transmit, and store the data in whatever databases that they are saving. A lot of these fintechs, why they keep sort of innovating, but at the same time, they are also exposed to a lot of potential risk around merchant frauds, cyber risk, anti-money laundering risk involved. Now, with these changes, with these development that keeps happening, fintechs and financial institutions need to ensure that they have in place a lot of controls, processes in place, so that they are able to better demonstrate the compliance culture, not only within the organization, but also show the confidence to the regulators about how they are actually ensuring these compliances. And last but not the least, is compliance cost really a costlier affair, and therefore it's not being spoken in the boardroom conversations or still not forming part of the P&L? The answer to all of these questions is Regtech, and that's where technology meets regulations. Solutions are being designed to solve regulatory problems. And that is where I'll turn to my experts now, and maybe I will start with you. If you can just share your opening remark on this concept and its relevance in the current environment.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Thanks for this introduction. I think let's simplify Regtech a bit, right? I think Regtech is nothing but it's a fintech, right? Regtech is nothing but fintech, right? I think it's the arm. It is something which is developing. It is something which is gaining prominence. And today, in fact, the whole theme for this event is global, resilient, sustainable. So we are talking about building companies, building ecosystems which are global, resilient, and sustainable. If you realized in the keynote speech by Honorable Finance Minister, she spoke about how companies need to build this ecosystem, how companies need to be more aware, create an atmosphere of trust. I think she used the word trust twice in her speech, in her address. And I think what we are here today and what Regtech does is actually build nothing but a circle of trust for customers, for the society, for the regulators, and overall for the entire ecosystem. So let me just try and simplify, Regtech. I think all of you would be familiar, but I would just like to simplify it. what is Regtech? In a very, very simple manner, right? I mean, Regtech is nothing but, monitoring 5 key areas of your business. Especially it becomes very critical in the financial services industry or the payment industry or the, any consumer-facing industries that we are here today, right? One is compliance, right? I think bunch of us have various compliances which need to be followed, right? Compliances, for example, payment companies will have to follow PCI, other companies would need to follow certain data protection guidelines, right? So there are various compliances which will need to be followed. That's one. Second would be risk management, right? You need to create a right set of tools. You'll need to create a right set of your risk management framework, both from a customer perspective as well as your internal company health perspective. A lot of lending companies, for example, need to report a lot of risk management factors of their organization, which tells the consumers, which tells the regulator that they are sustainable. So risk management would be, for example, a second example. Third would be transaction monitoring and transaction reporting. Very common word would be AML, right? I mean, if there is any suspicious transaction, how do you kind of manage it, report it, observe it? Fourth would be detection and monitoring, right? If you see any abnormally in a risk, in a system, it could be a malware risk, it could be a hacking risk, it could be chatbots, multiple things, right? So how do you kind of monitor and detect that? And last but not least, super important is identity, right? I mean, the identity is so critical, right? I think a lot of laws, if you see globally, are talking about protecting identities and managing identities. So so to summarize, Regtech is nothing but a systematic framework of monitoring and managing these 5 common areas, which is compliance, risk, transactions, identities, and other cyber attacks, I mean, in a common language. And this is where, and by managing this on a sustainable ongoing basis, we will be able to create a good and a sustainable ecosystem for business and for customers. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Deval, for sort of simplifying this concept. Sagar, let me come to you. You are a veteran of this industry and you have been building this Regtech business for the last 15 to 20 years. Tell us about your experience of building up this business, challenges that you have been facing in this particular business, and the use cases that you have been solving at this point of time.
Yeah, I think we've had the privilege to serve for about 15 years, and I think Regtech is a very, very wide space. We've had the opportunity to work on just 2 specific areas. One is anti-money laundering, and the second is CKYC. So these are the 2 areas that we've really specialized in. In terms of taking use cases and examples, I think let me narrow down on one particular regulation, very, very relevant this year, and we've seen all the regulators come out with circulars, and that has been the weapons of mass destruction. I'm not sure how many people out here have even heard that as a topic, right? And how does it even connect to financial services or fintech, right? Weapons of Mass Destruction and Distributed Systems Act 2005, right? And all of a sudden, you're seeing quite a few circulars coming out. Now, this particular regulation requires financial institutions to kind of check and make sure that before you shake hands with a customer digitally, right, before you start the relationship, you actually need to check and make sure that this individual or firm is not a part of any of the certain watch list or blacklist. There's also a word called sanctions, right? So there are these beautiful words. Essentially, what you're doing is just checking and making sure that this individual is not tainted, right? And we've been working significantly in this space, and I want to call out a couple of examples, right? So one such example is we've built a database of politicians and high-profile people in the country. And we've also included their mobile numbers to be a part of the database, right? Whenever a financial institution, and recently in one case, they onboarded a customer about 3 years back, right? And recently they realized that the mobile number of this individual, which had like a declared income of 1 to 5 lakhs, this mobile number was matching with a high-profile person in our country, right? And then they looked back and they saw the investments of this individual, and there was about 2.7 crores approximately in value over a period of 3 years, right? So not getting noticed at all because it was well distributed. On the face of it, right, it clearly seems that this individual was acting as a face, and probably the asset maybe belonged to the high-profile person, right? So in that sense, I think one of the things that I feel is the effectiveness of Regtech is extremely important, right? So if you do not invest reasonably well, Regtech will be just another layer, but it won't really actually help you protect. So I think over the years, and that's why we've kind of decided to stick to 2 or 3 areas and dig further in so that whatever we put in place is actually working.
Got it. Thanks, Sagar. Suresh, on this concept, Regtech, like we are seeing technologies like AI, ML, blockchains are getting used to develop a lot of these Regtech solutions. But we are also starting to see or hear people are also using ChatGPT, generative AIs as well to solve regulatory compliance issues. Which way you want to go?
Always a tricky question for me, right? Yeah, so guys, I actually agree with Sagar on most of the pieces. But before we go, okay, do I know exactly who I am talking with? So all of us are from the banking side, fintech side. Can we just raise a hand and say that, you know what, yes, we are listening or understanding? Boy.
Great, everyone.
So that means I have to be careful with the banks part. So, okay, good. So, guys, it's pretty simple. When Sagar said, you know what, we need a collaboration, what is our problem? Each company feels their knowledge is their asset, which is correct. But if you know there is a suspicious transaction, I don't know. That means in my system, it is still a whitelisted transaction. So there is a collaboration which is, or I say there is a gap which is still there. But before I go, your ChatGPT piece, guys, it's pretty straight and obvious piece. So we all have a car, right? How many of us have Maruti by any chance? We all, right? Oh, no, not many. Any other brands, guys, when we buy a car, what we do? We actually consult friends, families, then budget increase, then increase. And then, you know what? We buy something like a SUV, which we are never going to drive on a mountain. ChatGPT is exactly like that. I'm sorry for ChatGPT. If anybody employee from ChatGPT, I'm sorry, guys. This is just a name. So what is happening, guys? Just because we are in a competition with another company, we also want to declare that, you know what, we are a cutting-edge company with a technology which is like the latest. We pick it up. But actually, we never use it. And even if we use it, we really don't know what are we and what % of it we are using it. So my submission is, when you don't know the technology, why to use it? First. The second, guys, let's open our eyes. I know my business more than the ChatGPT pieces. So my fundamental piece was always, you know what, use the tech stack, even if it is decades old, but if it is reliable, use it. Please, let's not, just follow the race of the fintech or the tech stack. It might not give us what exactly we are looking for.
Sure, thanks. So you seem to be having a view that rather focus more on what you have rather than finding out in the market if something can come and disrupt what you are having.
Trust
No,
me.
that's interesting.
Trust me. Yep.
Great. Okay, so let me move to the next theme. I want to pick up, like, so we sort of heard from the speakers about what this concept is all about, where we can use it and all. Now, I just want to sort of hear and sort of get some perspective on the adoption of this Regtech in the current market. Like, is it happening? People are talking about it. Are boardroom conversations happening in investing or spending cost to get some of these tools? So let me start with Sagar, you first. How do you see, because you have been going and meeting a lot of regulated institutions, banks, financial institutions. What's been the talking point? Like, are there some metrics based on which these people want you to showcase outcomes, and that's where the interest comes in?
Thanks for that question. So I think the adoption of Regtech is as small as the number of people in this banquet. So I think in terms of over the years and what we've seen is when you talk about business, that is consistent, right? So if you have like 100 companies, it is consistent that growth of business is priority one for all the 100 companies, right? No denying that. But when you talk about regulation, and I think the few people here are from the compliance or the regulation side, I think fewer organizations give it, I think, the respect, or the importance that it deserves, actually. Going a little deeper, I think the biggest fundamental challenge is the awareness, right? It's been very common for us to meet, say, for example, principal officers who are the top authority, for AML implement requirements in any org. And when we meet them and we talk to them about saying the finance intelligence unit, has a guideline, a 75-page document for what you need to do for your business to implement AML regulations, right? And consistently, it turns out that majority, actually are not even aware about it, right? Something as basic as saying, okay, I'm not aware, right? And the other funny part is, a lot of times when we meet customers for demonstrations, for the sessions where we don't have principal officers, we typically ask in the room and says, who's the principal officer of your organization? It's hardly one or two people who would even know that who the principal officer is, right? So I think it fundamentally starts from awareness. I definitely feel that the board or the founders or the top management is keen to, embrace Regtech. It's just that the awareness of the regulatory obligations and the downsides aren't really aware. And if we are able to create that awareness at the top layer, I think everything else then kind of, falls in place.
God, thanks, Sagar. I just want to pick up this point around awareness, because that's in fact very much relevant. And get Suresh you in. We spoke about, like prior to this session, we were speaking about a story around Roti, Kapda aur Makan, right? And I like that sort of a story that you narrated to me. Why don't you just speak about the story and explain this concept of awareness right here?
Okay. So that was not... Okay. So guys, it's pretty simple, okay? I mean, I usually try to take some examples or maybe stories, but I think this guy has catch me again. So, you know what? When I started following the news, there was an issue. In India, we have issue which is Roti, Kapda, Makan. Even in 2024 election, you might hear these three words again, right? This is how we have been brought up, and I'm going old. I think my kids will follow the same suit. Guys, this is exactly when we started the fintech journey, or maybe before that, decades before that, when cybersecurity started. There was a beautiful word which is called spread awareness. Teach people, right? Even today, we are talking the same story. So if you see, Either we are growing or not growing. I am leaving it up to you guys, but this is how it is. Fintech business is a pretty delicate business. If I'll tell you an example, a Marwari person who is having a business of papad, bari, you know that, right? Do you know how they do the business? Okay, so they have relatives, right? So they have, like, if we all are relatives?
HUF.
Yep. So what will they do? They will not have varieties of accounts, right? Because in their family, the eldest person will take the all earnings and then distribute in the family. They have their culture, right? So now what will happen? They will actually open one account. And then the entire family will do the business in one account. And at times they will give that account to others as well. That, you know what, you take the money and then, you know what, give me the money back. And at times with that account, they will also do lending and credit business as well, which is, we call it as byaj ka dhanda, right? Now imagine if something happens, all of them will come and sue us. That's how the whole problem starts. What is the solution? Again, guys, the same roti kapda makan. We have to spread awareness. So, at times when we see this, I always see it like, you know what? It's nowhere related or only limited to my company perimeters. Now I have to go ahead out of the boundaries and teach people. And that is exactly, I feel as, this is where, again, sorry, but agree. No, that's the point, man. Sorry.
Thanks. We heard about this, in adopting this Regtech, we have some of these challenges which I think is yet to be solved, and it will be solved in the due course of time. They were coming to you. Do you see any alternate mechanisms that stakeholders, regulators can think for promoting Regtechs, bringing that confidence that these are the things that needs to be picked up by the organizations? So any incentive structures, mechanisms that you can sort of share some thoughts on?
Sure. Two things work: penalty, and number two is incentive. It is the same thing. I think life is very simple, right? Either penalty or incentive. Regulations are so strong, right? So for example, let's come to the incentive first. Penalties, I think everybody is aware, but we'll come to penalties as well. But let's look at incentive, right? Globally, many of the companies in this space of payments, for example, or for example in the space of lending, they also have something which is like a SRO, which is a self-regulatory organization. Yeah. And they also, it's the responsibility of the SRO to create an independent framework of monitoring how compliant or the organizations are from various points. It could be how compliant, for example, they are in protecting data, how compliant they are in keeping their systems up to date, how compliant they are in terms of their regulatory filings and regulatory reporting, and how compliant they are in monitoring and in their risk management, right? And basis this, every organization has a score, right? So it's like us as, think of us as investors, right? We have a credit rating score, right? All individuals have a credit rating score, right? All companies have a credit rating score, right? I think the time will also come, which we are seeing, is that companies who are doing business in the fintech space with the customer will have a trust score, right? Moment your trust score is higher, it can come up that you can charge a premium from the customer, okay? Moment your trust score is high, it means, let's say, your regulatory reporting requirements also could start becoming lesser. So, right? So how do you increase that trust score, right? So this is an indirect way of incentivizing, right? Because with a high trust score, which is very equivalent to the high credit score, right, that you have more excess, right? So with a high trust score, you will have a higher excess, right? That is one. And the second is it's actually absolutely important for penalties as well, right? Because just by having a high trust and, it will not work. Especially globally, it's not worked, so in India also it will not work, right? So, right penalty framework, right, of wherein the regulator would impose penalties. Even the customer has right to claim penalties from an organization, So this will also kind of, disincentivize companies, right? To not take a shortcut and rather follow the Regtech requirements or the compliance requirements to the fullest.
No, very interesting and very sort of good perspective on this trust score. I think it's worth taking forward this sort of a thought and try and see like if some recommendations or proposals could be made to the regulators to win confidence from them as well on this. So let me move to the next theme now. So the potential about this Regtech, like what's the future for this industry as a whole? And maybe let me come to you, Deval, first on this. We cannot complete this topic without talking about elephant in the room, which is like India Data Protection Act, which is already effective now. Now this act requires a lot of transformative changes in the way customer data have to be processed, managed, retrieved, accessed. So a lot of things have to be sort of thought through in terms of designing the entire end-to-end flow in order to ensure compliance with this Data Privacy Act. How do you see Regtech playing their part, and what are the opportunities for Regtech companies in this new Data Privacy Act?
Okay, no, I think all of us are aware, right? This PDP bill has come. Everybody is aware of the timelines by which it has to be implemented. So the PDP bill also gives companies a window from 12 to 24 months, depending on what they are doing, okay, depending on various stuff that they are managing, largely with regards to the customer data, right? So there's a 12 to 24 month window that the PDP bill specifies for all consumers and or for all companies to adhere, right? PDP bill also talks about a consent framework, right? I mean, let me define it very simply, right? Number one is ask for consent, right? Today, many of the things that come, we are just signing documents, but our data is being like circulated without our consent. So number one thing is ask for consent. Number two is establish boundaries, right? Where will you use? What will you use? Number three is classify data. What is essential data? What is non-essential data, right? So you have to take only essential data, not the non-essential stuff, right? Also, एक बार ले लिया उसका मतलब नहीं कि it's done. They'll have to periodically take your consent. So it's not perpetual that consent you're giving. And last but not the least, respect the customer's data and the customer's boundary. So, this is the framework, and I think, it's on the lines of GDPR, which has been very, very strong. But the PDP bill also gives a lot of teeth to the Indian consumers, which is everybody in this room, right? Two things become very, very important. One is, creating a consent management framework and consent management tools to manage data. So I think this will be a very cool, today there are I would know 2 or 3 companies in the world who probably have a consent management tool, right? Extremely expensive. So fintechs, this is a new opportunity, for us to build a consent management tool, desi, localized, take it global, right? But I think it's a great opportunity. That's number one. The second opportunity that comes is for a company like mine, slightly selfish. The FM spoke about encryption of data, retrieval of data. We are one of the leaders in data protection in the world, right? We invented the PIN, okay? So that's where it kind of comes in, right? So, a lot of data encryption, a lot of data protection technologies will gain a lot of prominence, and this is something that the customers will have to abide to. The companies will have to abide to. So along with consent framework and data protection, I think these will be the 2 important levers and technology adoptions that companies will have to take care in the next 12 to 24 months.
Sure, thanks. I think this topic can go on, and I have many more questions, but I just already got a signal that I need to now sort of wind up this. Maybe I'll open it up for audience, like if any questions from any, sorry, there are many. You want to go first?
Check.
I'll come to you, Devesh.
We might be able only to take actually one question, but we'll start with you quickly.
You want to take that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so firstly, I'm a very ashawadi, optimistic person, so I never say that we are late. I always feel that the moment we realize and we begin and do things effectively, I think we can win it, right? I think to add to that, I think if as long as we have the vision of becoming a superpower, say for example, United States, today we look at it as a superpower with the best defense capabilities. I think once we start looking at it saying if India has to become a superpower in financial services, our Regtech has to be world class or has to set the world benchmarks. I think with that motive, if we start even from today, I wouldn't say that we are late. Could we have done better? Yes, definitely yes.
But two levers are very important. You have the PDP Act and you have the new IT Act coming up. Yes. We are fine. And then we have a quick time to get into the play. So I think we're okay.
I can call you sir, right? Yeah. Thank you. So, I've been hacking into systems for 22, 23 years now.
Seriously?
So, the best thing is see whether somebody has failed or not. And if they are successful, how? Correct? So if you say we are late, I think good. We don't have potential to absorb the failure. Somebody has already failed many times, just copy paste it. That is even better. So I think it's good.
Thanks. My apologies. We won't be able to take more questions. Bhavna, back to you.
Sure.
We can have an offline conversations on any open questions.